We're looking forward to American Stories, February 26th at Holy Trinity Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia. Our special guest will be the woman I'm sitting here with, Ysaye Barnwell.
Thank you very, very much.
Our concert on February 26th is called American Stories. We'll be performing 4 of your published choral compositions. I gather at least 3 of them were composed for Sweet Honey in the Rock. But the other thing we'll be doing is asking you to lead us in song, to teach us a song in the oral tradition. And I want to ask you, why is that important to you to do that?
It's a long question. I really want people to understand the worldview of music created by African Americans. And the beginning of that worldview is in Africa, where notes on the page don't exist. And so everything that is done in African music is oral. And the music is vast. It's really vast. There are the griots who recite the entire history of their tribes, all musically, with the drums playing and all of that, and them kind of chanting and singing the history of generations and generations and generations. And we did not dispose of that when we came here. So a lot of all of our music was developed and maintained in that oral tradition. And so one of the things that I really love about it is that it's so inclusive. You don't have to read music, you don't have to be able to sing in any particular way, and yet you can still be part of the community. And so my whole method of working with people and trying to get people to understand music in community is oral, so that no one is excluded. Yeah.
For many of us, I think, who grew up in the classical tradition of having sheet music and notes on the page, there's actually an element that feels foreign to them, or at least long removed from when they maybe learned songs when they were very young or a baby. How do you include everybody?
No, I just assume that everybody is going to do what I ask them to do. And they do. And I think people actually get really excited about singing when they feel like, oh, I can do that, you know, and then some other personality shows up. And it's great.
I have a hard time putting a label on your music, saying that it is this style or that style. Do you have a label for your own music?
I don't.
What?
And interestingly enough, I didn't start out to write music. I started out playing music, violin, and singing in choirs. But I started a choir in a Unitarian church here for people who didn't read music, who were mostly black and couldn't sing in the upstairs choir because 9:30 rehearsal on Sunday morning, you had to read in Latin or in Portuguese or French or English, whatever the organist, choir director wanted to do that Sunday. And so I think I and 2 other black people were in the choir. That was it. And I'm looking out, you know, every Sunday saying, how come all these people are sitting why aren't they singing? And they said, well, you know, we don't read music. So I said, oh, okay, so let's have a choir of people who don't read music. And that literally was how I started doing what I do. And so I would just, you know, say to them, here's the melody. I started arranging different things, and now look at where it is. So it's important, I think, for people to have the experience of not having to read music. The minister used to, every month when he would dedicate babies, he would say, your children are not your children, they're the sons and the daughters, and that's Khalil Gibran. And I thought, you know, in kind of a joke, I said, let me set that to music, and then the choir could sing it, he wouldn't have to say it. And so that's what happened. Your children are not your, okay? So that was the first thing. And then I went to a funeral and I heard this poem, which was called Breaths, but I didn't know who had written it. I didn't know how to find it. And it took 4 years before I heard it again. And there was the poet, Birago Diop, Senegalese. And the reason it was so important to me was because it changed my whole worldview. about death and what happens when we die, and the fact that we're not alone, we're not without the people who were here, they're just in a different form. It was so powerful that I felt like I wanted to set that to music, and that's where listen more often to things than to beings, that's where that came from. So those two things were set really for that choir. And then I got into Sweet Honey in the Rock, mostly because Bernice Johnson Regan came to church on a Sunday when that choir was singing, I was singing, and I was also signing. Because I had studied sign language. And so she came to me afterwards and said, Sweet Honey is looking for a new member and we're having auditions starting tomorrow. Will you come? And I said, sure. And that was that. It was just the best experience I'd ever had in my life. Wow. And all of that was oral tradition. And it fed me in so many ways. I just couldn't believe it. So I've never actually written anything for Sweet Honey in that sense. Right. Those two were written for Jubilee Singers. And then a choreographer heard those two songs on the first recording that I did with Sweet Honey and commissioned me to write music for his dance company. And out of that came the Wanting Memories and the No Mirrors, and so, I've just been really fortunate.
I am sitting here wanting memories to teach me to see the beauty in the world through my own eyes.
Yeah.
Is this an autobiographical piece? What would tell us about this piece?
It actually is not. It is biographical, but from a friend of mine who, when we were first getting to know each other, how you say, oh yeah, well, I grew up in the blah, blah, blah. She said that she had grown up with her grandmother and that there were no mirrors in the house. And every day her grandmother would tell her how she looked, what she had on, how her hair had been, braided, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So her sense of herself was what was sent back to her from her grandmother. And this was one of the most self-aware, self-assured women I had ever met in my life. And that struck me. But when I was asked to write this suite of music for dance, I thought about that. And, it just really, I began to think, well, what happens in societies where there are no mirrors? How do people come to know themselves? What happens when someone dies, say in the Jewish family, and they cover the mirrors? Why do they do that? What happens? What is that about? And so for me, that song has opened up a big kind of world of how do we get to see ourselves? How do we get to know ourselves? And in this instance, it was through the eyes of this Nana, this grandmother. Yeah.
And is that the same woman who used to rock me in the cradle of your arms, from Wanting Memories? Or is that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
but that was her grandmother, because I didn't really have that experience.
Understood. Yeah.
So, yes.
The next piece of yours that we'll be doing is We Are. And for each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. I find this piece interesting on a number of levels, not least of which is, to my ear, it seems like there's a classical foundation to the piece. Was there a classical influence in this piece for
Bach
you?
is my favorite composer. And in junior high school, I discovered the Bach could swing. And that was due to the Swingle Singers. And I thought, oh, I like this guy. Because I could really always find his groove, and it just, for me, put another kind of soul into the music. And so, yes, I think that's what you're hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Thank
And
you.
what about the lyrics? The words are universal and beautiful.
Well,
was there an impetus to it?
It was important to me, I think, to just sort of say to people, we are in so many ways the same, that if we could just push the other stuff to the side and let the essence come through, we would understand that we are the same, a star, rose for the baby Jesus, and maybe one rises for each one of us as well, and that's what lights the heavens. And we all have intention, and we all have feeling, and we all have purpose, and that should be allowed to show through. And so yeah.
Spiritual. For choirs, singing music. They're used to sing spiritual, arranged by. But in this case, this is an original work of yours that's entitled Spiritual.
Yes.
And to my sense, it is, of all four beautiful pieces, this one packs the most punch. It's a very powerful piece. Was there a trigger for this piece? Was there a moment that compelled you to write this?
The spiritual was important for me because I wanted to pair old, traditional, and new. And so you have kind of two generations of music in the same piece, where Can't No One Know, the language of it is old. And I've always just seen women just sitting and rocking. You know, can't no one know at sunrise how this, you know, telling a story, you know. And then the younger generation comes back, yes, but in this world, you know, and blah, 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 there's all of this other stuff going on. And the elder's like, well, can't no one know. You just keep on.
So it's really a dialogue.
It's a dialogue.
Fascinating.
It is, yes. And the sound should change from that thick, you know, kind of deep sound to a brassier sound, and to indicate those generational differences in that dialogue.
The lyrics of the younger generation in this piece speak to very specific, painful moments. It's a mini geography history lesson. The troubles of the world fill our hearts with rage, from Soweto to Stonewall, Birmingham, and LA. Do you feel that there's resonance today, still 25 years later, with this?
I certainly do.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is now people kind of want me to change the words, you know, to include the da-da-da, include the wah-da-da. You know, and sometimes my response is, you have to write your own song. You know, this was written in a particular way for a particular reason. I believe that our music is one purpose for our music is to document where we are. But I don't necessarily feel like I have to take on changing the lyric. I need to document where I was at that time. And I feel like the struggles are universal enough that we don't have to keep renaming it, you know, because we have changed in some way, shape, or form. The issues still exist.
Well, one of the thinking musically about the group of these pieces, everyone in my choir is enjoying your music. I think the people who are enjoying it the most are the basses, because because you sort of give them a bass part and a drum part, very instrumentally conceived. Is that how it's intended?
Yes,
yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And since I was Sweet Honey's bass, it was always fun for me to sing.
There's my next question.
All right.
I wondered if we could get you to put my basses to shame and sing a few bars of Wanting Memories.
I don't have a perfect pitch, so I don't know what key I'm in. But anyway. The dum bum bum bum, the dum bum bum bum, the dum ba dum, the dum dum bum bum, the dum bum bum bum, the dum bum bum bum, ba dum ba dum, the dum.
You hear that, fellas? You hear that?
The dum bum, yeah. The dum ba dum,
When I think of music in the broader context of art, and art having the power to do many things, it can entertain, it can comfort, it can provoke, it can teach. Where do you want your music when your career is viewed, when we're celebrating you? Which of those things would you most like to be remembered for? Or are there other ways that art works on us that you'd like to have handed down?
I would add to that list only documentation of where we have been in particular periods of time, and that's why a lyric is relevant for a particular period. But I would hope that that all of the above would apply. You know, that music heals, it educates, it agitates. You know, it does all of that. Yeah. I'm grateful for art for that.
Yes.
I really am. Yeah.
So, February 26th and the beautiful Holy Trinity Church in Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia. You'll be presenting, and we'll be presenting your music. What is it going to be like when you teach a piece?
I will ask those people who like to sing in their low voice to stand up, and I will say, "This is your part, dum dum dum, dum dum dum," okay, or whatever. Yeah. And then I'll say, "Okay, this is the melody. If you're an alto, stand up. This is your part," and I'll give them the melody, and then I'll give the sopranos parts, and so people will be standing from different parts of the audience, and once the audience is singing in 4-part harmony, if not more, then I might say, "Hey, choir, here's a part for you."
Okay.
Yeah, okay. It works. It really works. It's very mysterious how it works.
But it sounds like true community.
It is, and I think people get so excited when they hear themselves, and when they're standing next to people that they maybe have known for a long time and have never sung together. Wow, it's joy. It really is.
In our society, I think the times in which, especially for those of us who are classically trained, times for which music hits us in our gut, music that makes us cry, music that makes us laugh, the chances for those are fewer and farther between.
Yeah. No, we need to have more material that we, have sung with our neighbors, with our enemies, with our friends. Just, come into the room and just sing. Let it go. Yeah.
So we're excited that on February 26th, you'll give us a little taste of what that community can be like without any hardship.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
It's been a great pleasure speaking with you, Ysaye, and we can't wait to have you.
I'm very, very much looking forward to it. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.